My name's Andy Kerr. I work with Bowers and Wilkins at the Research and Development Facility in Southwater in the UK. I'm here to introduce you to the new generation of Signature Series loudspeakers from Bowers and Wilkins and go through the technical details that make them so very special. But before we go into that, I thought it'd be really useful for us to just recap a little bit around the story of Signature and about what it means to the Bowers and Wilkins brand. So the first model that we introduced was the original Signature of 1991, so-called Silver Signature. It was designed to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the founding of the company, the Bowers and Wilkins brand, in 1966. It was also the first significant model launch after the untimely death of our founder, John Bowers, who'd sadly passed away in 1987. Now, the thinking behind the product was it was designed to encapsulate all of the thinking, all of the approaches, all of the technologies that had made Bowers and Wilkins so successful up until that point. You could buy, from Bowers and Wilkins in fact, much larger loudspeakers for similar money, but that wasn't the point in Silver Signature. Instead, it was supposed to embody perfection. It was supposed to be the most sophisticated version of all of the ideas that we'd had yet. In fact, a Silver Signature cost you more than 4 times as much as an equivalent 805. It made it one of the most rare and most bespoke loudspeakers in our portfolio, but that didn't stop it from becoming an icon. Now, we followed it up a few years later with an equally beautiful and equally distinctive model called the Signature 30, building on the same process and the same ideas of the original model, but now in a floor-standing execution. Again, very successful, again, very rare and very special in terms of its design. A few years after that, in 2001, there were 2 Signature models, based on our then very successful Nautilus 800 series technologies. So we had the Signature 805 and the Signature 800, floor-standing model and a 2-way model. In our 40th anniversary year in 2006, the famous Signature Diamond, probably the most bespoke model yet, both in terms of very advanced technologies. It used a diamond tweeter on top of its design in terms of high frequency, but also its configuration. So it was a 2-way loudspeaker with a tweeter assembly, a tweeter on top composed of solid marble. Beautiful, utterly exotic, and again, very rare and very distinctive in terms of its design. So that's the heritage. You're getting a common thread, I'm sure, running through all of this. Special, beautiful, distinctive, unique. What we're talking about now are 2 new models that we're adding to the Bowers and Wilkins portfolio, both Signature designs. So let's look at the details of them. What we have are the Signature 705, which is a 2-way design, based on the existing 705. So like that model, it's a 2-way loudspeaker with a tweeter on top configuration, like all preceding Signature loudspeakers. They're using a 165mm or 6.5-inch mid-bass cone and the carbon dome tweeter, so the 25mm 1-inch tweeter mounted in that tweeter on top assembly. That's joined by a floor-standing model, the 702 Signature. So again, using tweeter on top like the 705, but in this case adding a dedicated mid-range cone, which is 150mm or a 6-inch design, plus 165mm bass cones 3 off to complete the assembly. Again, both models very high performance in terms of their technologies, derived from 700 series but improved, and we'll go into the detail of that in just a moment. Beautiful in terms of their finish and bespoke and unique in terms of their design. Price point wise, for the 705 Signature, just under €3,000, just under £2,700, just under $4,000 for the pair. For the 702 Signature, just under €5,000 for the pair, £4,500, $6,500. So let's talk about the design details of the 2 models. Now, as I said, all preceding generations of Signature products have been tweeter on top designs with a beautiful and unique finish, and the exact same thing is true here. So both models tweeter on top configuration in terms of technology. Both models use a unique Datuk gloss finish. It's a beautiful high quality veneer, lustrously lacquered to give it a really premium finish that looks much richer than a standard cabinet. Both models also have a celebratory plaque on the back of the product to identify them as Signature Series products. In terms of other detailing, if you look at the front of the cabinets, you'll find both have a high quality brushed metal finish around the mid-range cones to really celebrate and identify that and pick it out. And they also use a bright metal work around their tweeter on top assembly to again, draw attention to the quality, the luster and the uniqueness of the finish in each product. So that's the finish. Let's talk about the technologies. Let's talk about what makes these products so special in terms of their performance. The thinking and the idea here is the same in terms of process as you'd find in preceding generations of Signature Series loudspeakers. So what we've got are drive units that are related to and carried over from existing 700 series loudspeakers. That's exactly how we've done it before. The difference is we've improved the crossover componentry to really maximize and optimize the performance of those drive units. So we've got carefully selected and upgraded crossover components. The signal pathway has been maximized in terms of its transparency, and we've tuned the system individually to make the most of the potential of each product. So let's talk about the specifics of those technologies. Now, a lot of you will be familiar with those technologies, but it's probably a good idea just to recap, just to make sure everybody's clear about what's inside each one of these products and what makes them so special. We're going to begin with high frequency. We're going to focus on the tweeter. Now, in both models, we're using the carbon dome. The carbon dome is something we innovated back in 2017, introducing into the then new 700 series. It's designed specifically to sit between our aluminium double dome tweeter, which we use in our more affordable products, and our diamond dome tweeter, which we use in our 800 series diamond range. In terms of performance, its first breakup is very respectable, around the 47 kilohertz mark, which means great in terms of resolution, great in terms of transparency. In terms of its behavior and how it works, it's very clever in terms of technology. It's a two-part design. So what we've got is the primary dome. The main dome is 30 microns, so it's very thin, very light. And what we do is spray a coat of carbon over the top surface of that using a process called PVD, physical vapor deposition. And that makes it very light, but also very stiff because of that reinforcing effect that the carbon has over the aluminium. There's a second section that goes onto the back of the dome, which is a profiled ring of pure carbon, and that's bonded onto the inside face of the dome. The end result of that is we really stiffen up around the periphery, the edges of the dome, and as a result of that, we get better behavior. We get much more resistance to distortion and bending and flexing than we would do otherwise. Now that's the principle in terms of construction. Let's have a look at it in terms of its measurement and how it actually behaves. First thing I'm going to show you is a response based on an aluminium double dome. So we're going to put a signal into that, and as we go upwards in frequency, around 36 kilohertz, you can see the dome is starting to bend and flex in undesirable ways. In other words, it's starting to distort. You can see that in that red plot, moving up and down, showing the cone really starting to get into distress. What that means, audibly, is you're going to be losing detail and the cone's going to sound really quite uncomfortable. Now, if we put the carbon dome at exactly the same frequency, you can see it's behaving more or less perfectly. You can see most of the surface area of the cone is behaving exactly as it should, like a perfect piston. Now, that means, audibly, from the point of view of performance, that what we get is much less distortion, much less uncomfortable resonances getting in the way of the sound, and the result is much better sound quality for the price point. Now what we do next is take that tweeter and we mount it inside a unique enclosure, the tweeter on top assembly. As I said, all preceding generations of signature products have used tweeter on top, but this is the most optimized version yet. What we're doing here is looking at the assembly and the structure of an older generation of tweeter assembly, an hollow one, and as you can see, we're passing energy through it, we're putting resonance through it. And what that's doing is translating into visible resonances moving through the system. It's called a velocity plot. And what you can see in those areas that are highlighted in red and orange and yellow is unwanted, undesirable resonances. Now, particularly important here because you'll notice that they're actually at the front of the assembly, which is exactly where the dome is going. In other words, we're making noise precisely where we should also be making sounds that you want to hear. And that's not something that we want to achieve. So what we did a few years back in the development curve for the 800 series Diamond was develop a new process, a new way of thinking called the solid body tweeter assembly. And in 700 series, we ported that technology across. So this new generation product uses a piece of solid aluminium. In fact, it's over 1 kilogram in weight, and it's milled from that block to create the solid body tweeter assembly. Now, if you put that same piece of metal at the same resonance as you were just looking at in terms of frequency, you can see nothing. You can see that it's virtually inert. And what does that mean in terms of performance? It means as an outcome, again, much lower noise, and that means much better transparency and openness, detail, clarity, all the things that are really valuable in a premium performance loudspeaker. So that's the high frequencies covered. Now let's talk about the mid-range. And the exciting news here is this is the first time we've taken the Continuum Cone technology and applied it to a signature series of products. So as the 702 and 705 signatures are based on the existing 700 series models, that naturally means they use the Continuum Cone. Now, Continuum, of course, you'll be familiar with by now, but it's probably worth our while just recapping over some of the key technologies and some of the key reasons why it's such a big performance upgrade for the Bowers and Wilkins brand. It replaces the preceding generation of technology, the iconic yellow Aramid fibre that we'd used for so many years. It took us some 8 years and over 70 iterations of work to finally get it right, but we're very pleased with the outcome, very pleased with the performance, and of course, I hope you know, we manufacture it wholly ourselves in our factory in the UK in Dell Road, so we're fully in charge of both the quality and the performance. Now, speaking of the performance, let's take a look about what makes it so special. What I'm going to do is show you first a standard Aramid fibre mid-range cone, and what we're going to do is put an impulse into it, a response in real time, which is a single click, like that. And that's going to start right at the heart of the cone. And what you'll see is the energy from that impulse propagating across the surface area of the cone and moving towards the edge. As it does so, and as it hits the edge of the cone, some of it begins to come back. Some of it begins to resonate back into the system. And you can see that in that unwanted noise. It's rippling across the surface area of the cone. And what that translates into is sound or noise that's getting in the way of the original signal. It's actually masking and blocking the true sound. Now, what we wanted to do with Continuum was essentially try and work in the same way. So in terms of the design, it's a flexible cone. It's not a pistonic cone. But using a better quality of material, a better design in terms of process to really reduce that unwanted noise compared to the preceding generation. So the principle behind it is a concept called optimized flexibility. It's a very flexible cone indeed. As we put that single click inside it, you'll see it begin to move towards the edge of the cone, and so much less of it begins to come back, begins to move back towards the center, in fact, significantly reduced. As an outcome of that, we get much lower noise. If I put the two cones side by side in real time, you can see exactly how much better it is. So the two cones in the same time domain, we put the click into both of them, look at the two cones behaving, and you'll see that the energy is beginning to ripple and move in all those unwanted ways through the surface area of the Aramid fibre cone, while the Continuum cone is really rapidly beginning to go completely quiet. Now, what does all that mean for you in terms of the listening experience? It's really straightforward. What it means is massively reduced levels of noise, massively reduced levels of unwanted resonance through the system, and as an outcome of that, greatly improved perceived resolution. Essentially, the system sounds much more natural, much more transparent, and you can really hear the difference in terms of the performance. So that's mid-range cones covered. The last thing we need to talk about, in particular relevance to the 702 signature, is bass cones. So this, again, is an advanced Bowers and Wilkins technology, something that was developed originally for 800 series diamond, and then we modified and reutilized in the 700 series range back in 2017. So we've got the aerofoil profile low frequency cone. This is a carefully optimized structure that uses a unique curving system to the back of the cone to improve the stiffness and reduce resonances and push away that unwanted moment of breakup. So what we're going to do here is just show you a simple comparison. What we have on the left is a standard paper cone, a regular cone that you'd find in a more affordable loudspeaker. And what we're going to do is, again, put some energy into that, and you can see as it's starting to move up and down, it's again showing that unwanted bending and flexing, that resonance as it's moving through the system, which translates into distortion that's audible. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see the aerofoil profile cone at the exact same frequency, and of course, as you would expect, it's behaving a great deal better. And that's as a direct result of its profile, its curvature, and also its sandwich construction. So it's using paper skins, just like the cone on the left-hand side, but it's two of them, not one, so an outer and an inner face, and then the sandwich between that is a very light EPS filling material, which gives you that perfect combination of form and stiffness. And again, the outcome here as a result is significantly improved performance. It's not about more bass, it's about ensuring that the bass that you hear is free from distortion and as a result more accurate, more articulate, and less likely to impede the performance of the system as a whole. So that's all the details, that's all the technologies, and you've heard the story of Signature as well. Let's try and summarize all of that up in specific relevance to 702 and 705 Signature. They are consistent with the approach and the philosophy of all Signature models since we first produced those models back in 1991, the original Silver Signature. Beautiful standards of finish, unique, specific to each design, celebrated by a plaque on the back to identify them as being distinct and different from a regular 700 series model, optimized in terms of crossover design, maximized in terms of performance. They are fantastic additions to the Bowers and Wilkins range, and we hope you enjoy listening to them.